I was dismissed from Howard, fired from Howard in June 1975. In November 1974, while still at Howard, I heard a rumor that I was going to be blocked from promotion and tenure because of my views, not because of my academic work. But let me make one correction. My theory does not say that whites are inferior to blacks. I don't say that. I say that whites feel that they are inferior because they cannot produce skin pigmentation and because their status as, I say, a variant of albinism is genetic recessive to blacks, and they can be genetically annihilated by non-white people. And this is very, very basic genetics, and it not only is very basic genetics, this is common lay knowledge, and we hear it, the dominance, the genetic dominance of black over white is heard in the expression, one drop of black blood makes you black. In other words, if you were to relate to a white female, the product of that relationship would be an individual that is identifiable as what is called non-white. They would have something, I mean, the curliness of the hair, the darkness of the skin would make the child look more like you than like the mother.
White. Would you agree or disagree that the terms black and white are not genetic definitions? And if they are not genetic definitions, then how could your theory be true?
Well, wait a minute, when you say genetic definitions, I'm not quite sure what you say, but for the sake of time, the factors that determine whether we're going to have skin pigmentation or whether we lack skin pigmentation is based on genes. In other words, you have genes that determine the quantity of melanin pigment that is going to be produced in your skin, in your eyes, and your hair. If you have a gene, a mutation, towards an inability to produce that pigment, that is also genetically determined. And that is at least within the context of the Western world, or the white supremacy culture. The dominant classification of people, not as determined by Francis Welsing, but as determined by white people themselves, is your classification. Either you are white or you are classified as non-white. This is on your birth certificate. This is on every paper of identification that you have. And this focus on skin coloration, I maintain, is based on the awareness on the people who are now in power that they are a minority. The white group represents a minority in the world population. And the color focus is something that is a psychological, I say a psychological necessity based on a genetic reality. So that, for example, all of us learned as we were growing up in the black community, if you are black, stay back. If you are brown, stick around. If you are yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're right.
I am a general psychiatrist and child psychiatrist. I'm from Chicago, but I have been in Washington, D.C. since 1958 when I came to medical school at Howard University. And did all of my training in general psychiatry at St. Elizabeth's Hospital and child psychiatry at Children's Hospital here in Washington. And I have been interested in how to solve the mental health problems and other healthcare problems faced by black people. And I began to realize that until the problem of racism was solved, that black people were going to have difficulty.
Is the problem of the color lines. So I said to myself, why would a system for the purpose of maintaining white power over non-white powerlessness, why would such a system evolve on this particular planet, planet Earth? And then I thought about some of the things that are said within the system. One of the critical things is that we are taught that white is a majority. Is that right? Yes. And we are told that non-white is genetic inferior. And then I just thought about the things that, you learn going to school for a long time and going to medical school. I said, wait a minute, white is a tiny minority. Fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet have white skin. Right. And instead of black people being genetically inferior, the ability to produce this black pigment, melanin, is a genetically dominant trait. And we have an excellent example in our president, Barack Obama. His mother is white, was white, his father was black. And you mix these together and what do you get? A colored person. See, always a black person. So I said that, okay, on this planet Earth, in the 15th century, we had Columbus, 1492, coming out of Europe and realizing that the earth was round and not flat. And everywhere these white people landed, they found colored people, right? And if those men were sexually frustrated and the people were over time, and the women had sex, or I should say the men had sex, imposed sex, however you want to look at it. If they waited around 9 months, they found that all of the children looked like the mothers. And so they realized, wait a minute, we are a tiny minority in Europe and no other place where there are white people. So they said, wait a minute, what if these men got in votes? And started going from south to north. We could genetically disappear. A system.
She was a celebrated scholar who studied the origins of white supremacy from a psychological and biological perspective. In calling for strong families and role models in the black community, Welsing wrote, "Children are the only future of any people."
See, that's where little children are brilliant. Little 2-year-old people, little 3-year-old people, they start saying, why? Why? You know, and older people get annoyed, shut up. But don't ever tell a child. If a child is saying, why, mommy? Why, granny? Why? You may not know the answer. Just tell the child, I don't know the answer, but I'll try to find out for you. And if I don't find out and you study and learn, you'll find out. But the question why is what turns on the brain computer. The child is asking about cause and effect. And if you can begin to understand cause and effect, you begin to get a handle on dealing with reality.
This is our history. This is black history.
Neely Fuller Jr. profoundly influenced Dr. Frances Cress Welsing in her understanding of racism as a systematic issue. Dr. Welsing's quote, "Racism is a system," encapsulates Fuller's core philosophy, which served as a foundational concept for Welsing's work. Fuller's insights into the structural nature of racism provided Welsing with the framework to analyze and dissect the complexities of racial oppression. His emphasis on the systematic nature of racism helped Welsing develop her groundbreaking Cress theories on the psychological and social dynamics of white supremacy. Welsing incorporated Fuller's teachings into her own research, expanding upon them to explore the deep-seated roots of racial inequality and the mechanisms throughout which it operates. Together, they contributed to a deeper understanding of racism as not just individual acts of prejudice, but as a pervasive and enduring system of power and control.
I cannot take any credit for what I have done without giving credit to Neely Fuller Jr. See, Mr. Fuller was a guard at the Bureau of Engraving. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a college graduate, but he was a man who had started writing about racism. And as I've said before, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And there was a voice over in the corner saying racism is a system. And it was like a light bulb went on in my head. I say that what he did in bringing our attention to the fact that we are dealing with a total system structure, that he provided this critical key. And I don't know if Mr. Fuller would want me to say this, but he is a special human being. And when he was younger, he had been in a car accident. Some of his friends were driving fast as young people, and I think a couple of people were killed in the accident. And he did not have any injury, no damage. He said he might have had a little tear in his shirt. And when the state trooper came along, asked him, "Did you see the accident?" He said, "I was in it." And that could not be believed. They didn't want to believe it. How could he come out in this form? I think he came out in the form because he had a mission. And that mission was to bring to us the concept that we are dealing with a system. And I think I encountered him because he has the same birth date as my father. And it's because of my father that I am a physician. My father was a physician, and his father was a physician before him. So because of him, and because of his father interacted with Ida B. Wells Barnett. I sat in the second grade behind her granddaughter in Chicago. You see how things are woven together. And so the influences that you had, I had the influence of taking a course with Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois when I was in college. I stood for 3 hours talking to Malcolm X in 1956, just as a college student. You see, but the children are walking around holding this 24 hours a day and really the brain becoming addicted to all that activity on the screen. So it's like when parents, I see some parents who try to discipline children by taking the phone away, and the children almost act like they're drug addicts. You see screaming and screeching until they can get it back. And so then the control and the programming that is going on. So I just say that people need to be aware.
Dr. Welsing, I just want to thank you for your beautiful, outstanding person. And I'm glad that our people, and sometimes I think we got to talk to white folks too. And we had Tim Wise come to the school that I work at. And are you familiar with his work? And I'll sit down and just listen.
Tim Wise said about Francis Welsing that Dr. Welsing